I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I'm a master gardener, and I've been, gardening for quite a while. I took your class a couple years ago when it first came out, the grow your own vegetable thing, and I've been experimenting ever since. And I actually had to do a master gardener presentation at the local library about container gardening. So I remembered on the Harvest Club stuff, and with the class I went back through the container gardening stuff just to like refresh my memory, and I was really interested, since it's winter, to do the indoor gardening thing. And so I wanted to set some stuff up to show them, that I could do it. And so I was excited to show you my closet garden, and it's going pretty well. I wanted to, like I said, increase the yield a bit if I could, because there's not a whole lot of organic food that I can get here now with all the recalls and things, especially on, I know, the East Coast. We're having a lot of hard times trying to find greens. So I would like to have the opportunity to maybe, I used to belong to CSAs, and you know how you get the little, the bag of like baby greens, that would last me pretty much the week. So I was hoping to kind of get that kind of yield if I could for the winter, from the closet garden, if possible.
And so you mentioned that you were a member of a CSA, and that you value the fresh food. So what does fresh food mean for you, or why do any of this?
I like growing food. I think that's fun. I enjoy watching things grow. I enjoy, organic food is important to me. I used to have, it's funny, I've been diagnosed with Graves' disease, and it wasn't something that really ran in my family, because mostly it has a sort of kind of genetic component. But I was starting to read research where there were a lot of things, environmental toxins, things like that, that were contributing to these endocrine disorders. And so I just decided to go organic. And that was probably 10, 11 years ago. And so I was with the CSAs for a while, and I wasn't growing as much on my own. I didn't realize I could grow a lot, enough to feed myself. So that's how that's what started it. And ever since then, so in about 7 years after being completely organic, I don't test positive for Graves' anymore, which they say my doctor's very surprised.
Wow, that's incredible. I missed the name of the disease. What is it?
Graves' disease.
Graves?
It's a hyperactive thyroid.
Oh, okay.
Instead of being underactive, it's overactive.
Okay.
So it's not something they like to say is treatable. So it went into remission on its own, and I believe it had a lot to do with eating fresh green vegetables, not buying the prepared foods and doing it yourself.
That's amazing. And so now you're growing greens indoors. What percentage of your greens are you growing for yourself?
Like I said, I've had some issues trying to get it up and running. I really would like to grow most of them if I could in the winter time.
And then you said when you grew outdoors, you had more than you could eat, and you were giving it away. Yeah.
Yes, my husband is Italian, and they have a giant Italian family, and everybody loves green vegetables. They love to get presents of vegetables, so everybody was looking forward.
Oh, that's amazing. That's one of my favorite parts of my garden, is that it really brought my family together. I grew up in my mom's garden. You've probably heard that story before. And I just think it's so phenomenal to connect over food. It's part of our cultural heritage. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, does your family want specific types of greens because of their heritage, or things that they want to grow to eat?
They like bitter greens a lot, and they're like the salad greens, and they don't ask for anything in specific, but they always eat everything I give them.
That's amazing.
It's good, because sometimes it's overwhelming when you come in the house and you have 2 baskets full of greens, and you just know your husband's not going to eat them again. So it's like, here, take this, smell me.
That's awesome. And what would you say for people who are just getting started, and they're just getting started indoors, or they're just getting started with their first garden, and they're like, should I really do this? What would you say to them?
I would say yes. I would say it's you'd be very surprised with your own what you can do actually, because my husband was not very familiar with growing anything. He's a musician. He's not a science person. So when we were out in the garden and he was seeing things grow, he became amazed. And it's almost like then you become a teacher to other people. You explain and they ask questions, and you bond, and it's fun. And the whole time you're only growing things, which isn't, it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal, but it is, because people look at you now like you have these skills, and then when you show them how easy it is, they get excited about it too. They always ask me about the garden. That's one of the first things, and come February, like, what do you have growing, and what are you planting on this year?
That's amazing. And what I love about this is it truly is a lifestyle. I think people think about gardening like, this is my growing season and this is when I'm going to grow food. And you're proving that you can grow year round. You're deciding, I'm going to figure out a way to grow my greens year round. So why, for you, why is it so important that you're doing this year round, that this is a lifestyle? Like, why not just grow when it's easy in the summer?
Because I find it hard to find good quality greens in the supermarket, honestly. And not always is it convenient to go to a CSA to pick it up in the wintertime. And it's fun, on top of that, it's fun. And it's a hobby, in the wintertime when it's really when you live on the East Coast and it's winter and there's not a whole lot to do and there's not much on TV. You break out your books and your magazines for ordering seeds and things like that, and it kind of brightens it up. But you really look forward to springtime when you can grow outside, and then when you get things like this going on inside, it's just then you have something to look at all the time.
That's amazing.
I set everything up, but my yield is not exactly where I want it to be, and I was wondering if I could increase it in some way, if there's something.
Awesome. Okay, this is super exciting. So I see all the grow lamps behind you. Do you want to show me what you've got going on, and then we can talk about what we can do to improve it?
Absolutely. Here it is. This is the garden.
This looks like a very typical garden.
And this is what it looks like.
Awesome.
So I have everything in here. That's the trays. It's going well. So I mean, the first battle is done, where the system is kind of set up. The other fun thing is that you get to watch things inside that you would only ever see outside growing, really, and you can watch it daily. Especially, this is my office, so I get to watch things a lot. This is a broccoli. I had lots of extra old seeds, so I wanted to try, and I really like the broccoli. This is cress. This is more lettuce. This is all arugula. Arugula, basically the same trays over again, where I'm using up the older seeds that I have.
It's amazing. Yeah, I love it. And you're very much like me. I'm a big arugula fan.
We are too.
Yeah.
So I hope that my watering is becoming an issue. It's kind of a warm room, and so it's eating up a lot more water, and I'm not as consistent as I try to be. I mean, I'm every day, but still I find that's not enough. And I did the little inverted bottles, but you can't get them you can't use anything big because it's gonna tip. So now I'm thinking, is there a way I was considering like a wick system, or like maybe I could suspend something and have like a little drip system. Have you ever tried any of these like indoors? I'm afraid with the water.
Yeah, it's always interesting growing food indoors in the watering systems, because at that point if something goes wrong and you're on vacation or wherever, you come home and there's a mess, right? Yeah. So I totally get that. Yeah. So like you did, I definitely did little bottles. Like the maximum I would do would be like those, I think they're like 6-ounce bottles that I would tip upside down, and then I would kind of prop them against something to make sure they wouldn't fall over while I was away. And I found that I could go on vacation for a week and they would manage themselves pretty well. But you might be in the realm of thinking about a wicking system to make your life easier. there's going to be a couple things to consider just because you're indoors. So have you had any issues with any kind of flies, any kind of indoor flies or anything?
Luckily, no, nothing so far.
Awesome.
Yes.
So you're doing great.
Here, but I have an exhaust fan in my window most of the time because I work in here. So I'm able to control the environment a little bit. So I've been working on that. So far, so good with that.
Perfect. Yeah. And so gnat flies are sort of like the typical indoor fly that comes around whenever your starting seeds are growing like trays. And that airflow is going to help. So that's good news. Because when you start, the reason I asked is that when you start to think about a wick system, what can happen is there can be more moisture. And sometimes more moisture means a bigger possibility for those gnat populations to show up.
I did notice in the beginning before I had the window and the exhaust in here most of the time, there was getting a little bit of a fuzz. And I was probably, I was thinking because of the worm compost, because everything's decaying. So it's just that. And it didn't seem to bother the plants in any way as long as as long as I acted on it soon and added some air and then it was okay.
Okay.
But I think that will definitely I think it will be a problem unless I don't know if I could leave this in all the time. So I probably need something in there.
It might be a good idea. And then you said that your yield isn't what you expect. So is it a timing yield or a quantity yield that you're questioning?
Well, I was thinking that maybe some of yours looked like they were getting more towards braising greens, like baby green size.
Yeah.
Maybe about 8 weeks, right? But that's not, they weren't getting that big. And then so my last tray, I didn't pack as densely, I didn't grow as densely, and that seems to do a little bit better. So I'm wondering how much are you actually, would you say you would be for braising greens? It's obviously less, I would think, less seeds.
Yeah. So let's think about it this way. So let's just use my thumbnail for a second. So my thumbnail is probably 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch.
Okay.
And if I do I oftentimes will do maybe 2-ish seeds per that thumbnail for braising greens, between 2 to 4. And sometimes I'll do more. So like when I'm looking at it's weird because when I look at the soil, I don't really gauge that way. I just kind of know, right?
Yeah, but I'm definitely overdoing it.
You're doing great for probably small greens, and then they get to a place where their roots because the soil is probably only this deep, and then they just sort of run out of space. So if you want, the braising green size, I would say like maybe 4 the size of your thumbnail maximum to get the braising green. And what was the other thing I was going to say? And then also the lights, how long do you have them on?
I do. I have them on a timer for 7 hours.
So it might be that your light, I used to do 16 hours on my lights.
I was thinking less because I didn't want to overdo it with light. Like seeing how sometimes it's over too much, but I guess not indoors, right?
Indoors is totally different. So for whatever reason, the ability of the sun is just magnificent, right? So when you're outdoors and you have the sun beaming down, you get 6 to 8 hours of sunlight and it's everything you need. But when you're indoors and you're reliant on these lights, I recommend 14 to 16 hours. I used to do 16 hours. I did 16 hours because I slept in the same room. And so I needed my 8 hours of sleep. And so the timer would go off. I'd be like, it's time to sleep. Yeah, the lights, it was awesome wake up call. It was like, zing. It was like, okay, it's time to get up. And because it feels like outdoor light, it feels good to wake up to because it feels, yeah.
I like this room. I like all the light in here. It feels good.
Yeah, I love this room. I'm so excited. I have a question. What are you growing behind you?
Oh, these are just my house plants.
Okay.
See, and they're life that are, 16 hours. But I thought for whatever reason, food would be less time because I'm thinking in terms of outside where greens would get too much light at some point.
Yeah.
Me. I don't know.
So my guess is when you do that, you're going to see a boost in everything.
Awesome. Great. That would be great.
Yeah. And it looks like they're pretty vibrant. Do you do any kind of fertilization at all, or do you just rely on the soil mixture and the worm poop?
I am doing the seaweed at the King's Harvest, right? Like Neptune, every other week.
Awesome.
I've been doing it consistently with the first 2 trays. With the last tray I have, and I have seen an improvement actually. The green lettuce up here, the lettuce up here is doing pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd love to see. Oh, that looks beautiful.
Yeah, so that has definitely helped being consistent about doing the seaweed every day.
Yeah. That's the trick with growing indoors, is that you've only got that thin layer of stuff, and it works great for microgreens because the microgreens don't really need a lot of extra nutrition. But once you get above that first leaf, you really need some extra nutrition for the indoor greens. So,
right. Okay, cool.
When you got started with the class, you mentioned earlier on the call you took the course a couple of years ago. Why did you join the class?
I don't know how I came upon it. Maybe on YouTube or something. I saw one of your videos, and I liked the idea of the spreadsheets and things like that. That seemed pretty cool because I wanted to start playing with succession planning and things. And so I took it and we watched the videos. My husband, watches me watch the videos. And then that first season, I actually got it all going, and I was doing everything, and I had the plan. I started doing the Master Gardener stuff, so I got kind of interrupted, and I want to get back to it this year. But the first season that I did it, it was actually very, very successful. I tried the second season, but we had some rain, and I kind of lost track. But that first time, I think that I had over 100 pounds of vegetables.
Okay.
Granted, it was a lot of tomatoes, but my husband was shocked. We were giving away greens like crazy, and it worked out really, really well. So I've been, you go back and forth, and every year you get better at planning everything. So after I got done doing some of my classes, I started watching the videos that were available on the Harvest Club, and I found all new things, and I've been having fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us a tour and letting people know what you're up to. I think it'll be really inspiring for people to see this.
I was very excited to show you. Me and my husband, actually, he knows your name. He was trying to Google and find your list of, I told him about your list of Christmas things to get gardeners. So he's trying to find it on his own, and I had to email it to him. So
Awesome.
those.
So keep us updated. Do those little things that we talked about, and then keep us updated and let us know what the changes are.
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.